Hi everyone, I'm Rincy and this is Rincy Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about Gilmore Girls: A Year in the Life. If you follow me on Twitter, you will know that I recorded a version of this video. The lighting was crap. I replaced my light bulb, so now it is not crap. But I'm going to try to recreate as much of the thoughts and emotions that I had during that video. I also think it was a blessing in disguise because I was able to sort of jot down notes now instead of just flying off the cuff, and hopefully I'll be more organized. Last time this was a 30-minute video. We'll see. I'll probably still end up around that mark because I have a lot of thoughts. So with Gilmore Girls: A Year in the Life, I was extremely worried going into it that it was going to disappoint me like Arrested Development did. But in general, I liked it. I have quibbles, which I will get to. So the way I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I will be jumping back and forth with storyline and characters and things like that. Also, if it wasn't clear, there will be spoilers for the entire thing, including the ending. So if you haven't watched the series all the way through, I recommend coming back to this later, unless you don't care about being spoiled, but I'm going to be very explicit in my spoilers because there's a lot to talk about. So first, to start off with, the good. I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like winter and fall were the best episodes in the entire thing. Probably because they were actually written and directed by Amy Sherman-Palladino, as opposed to Spring and Summer, which were written and directed by Daniel Palladino, her husband. His episodes are always very hit or miss with me, but Amy's are always right on point. And I feel like, especially with starting off the series with everyone going in not knowing what this is going to be, it started off perfectly with the snow and the banter between Lorelai and Rory. It all felt right, the music felt right. This series perfectly encapsulated what Gilmore Girls is for me. The best characters, in my opinion, were Emily. Emily is probably number one. She shows so much growth, not just within these 4 episodes themselves, but even just from where she was as a character at the end of season 6, season 7. And her storyline in here was perfect. I think the way that they paid tribute to Edward Herman and Richard was perfect, and I think everything surrounding all of that was just spot on. I definitely welled up a lot dealing with the Richard storyline, and the part that made me cry, well, on the first watch through, the part that made me cry was when Lorelai calls her mother and tells the story of seeing her father at the shopping mall. The second part that made me cry was during the third watch through. Yes, I've watched this more than once already. So during the third watch through, when Rory's going through the house and she sees or imagines those dinner time scenes, the one where she walks into the office and there's like the hologram of Richard sitting at the desk, that one was a lot for me. I also think all of the ways that the characters grieved Richard was just like spot on. Emily going through that episode where she was really depressed really made sense to me. I was listening to the Gilmore Guys podcast earlier, and they were talking about how it didn't make sense to them that Emily went through this depressive stage in, I think it was either spring or summer where that happened, but it actually made sense to me because as you're grieving, it doesn't really hit you all at once necessarily, and especially in the early stages of grieving, you have enough stuff to keep you busy that you don't think about it too much, and it's actually later on that it seems to hit you more. So I thought all of that was really well done, and even seeing the different ways that all of the different characters grieved Richard and how connected they were or not to Richard all really made sense to me. And I think that Emily had the most satisfying ending to her storyline. Like, one of my friends, while we were watching this, I watched it once by myself. Actually, I watched it twice by myself. And then I had a viewing party at my house, and so at the viewing party, one of my friends was like, we should all aspire to grow up to be like Emily Gilmore, which isn't the worst aspiration to have in my opinion, especially with the way everything turned out for her. I think that they just did a great job with her storyline. Next up is Paris. Paris was so well done in this storyline. My only quibble would be that I was kind of sad that her and Doyle were going through a divorce, but that provided ample story for her in the series, which I really liked. Everything with her working in the fertility clinic and her speaking at Chilton, the bathroom scene at Chilton, oh my gosh, with the scene where she kicks the door. Everyone keeps referencing that scene, but it's because it's so amazing. The one quibble that I did have again with all of this is that the whole Francie thing really didn't sit well with me. That was just weird. Like, there was no reason to see her, and the fact that Paris immediately regresses back to high school was really weird. Also, relatedly admittedly this would go in the bads category, but the whole Tristan thing didn't make sense to me, but I will touch on that in a second when I get to the bad category. Next up, Kirk. For how much they use Kirk, I'm very surprised by how much I enjoyed all of it. Maybe this was a thing more in 7th season, but I feel like in the 5, 6, and 7 they start using Kirk a lot more in Gilmore Girls, and I didn't like it that much. I think Kirk used sporadically is the best type of Kirk, and maybe it's just because these episodes were so long it allowed for more Kirk, so percentage wise it wasn't necessarily more, but I think that Kirk was just well used. The Uber joke, I don't know why I love that so much, but I did. And then the ending with Fall where he decorates this town square and Lorelai texts him was just perfect. The fact that he dressed up for the Black, White, and Red movie night, his short film, all of that. Loved it all. Very surprised by how much I loved Kirk, because Kirk wasn't necessarily my favorite character, like I always enjoyed him, but in here he was fantastic, and also he probably looks the best out of all of them in terms of characters who have aged since the last. And speaking of the townies, the other townies that I was really excited about were Babette and Maury. I don't know why, but that scene with Maury when they're at the movies and they're grilling the sausages made me laugh. When Kirk mentions his short film and Maury's wearing the Kirk short film t-shirt, like I don't know why, all of that delighted me so much. It's like those little hints or those little winks that I really appreciated more than just like the heavy-handed winks, which I will get to later. And I also think that those were characters who are well executed in terms of their cameos. Again, when I get to the bad section, I'll talk about the winks and cameos that I didn't like. Another thing that I really enjoyed were the Jason Ritter and Peter Krause cameos. This one is pretty divisive among people. I know that some people really didn't like it, but I actually thought it was kind of cute to see those interactions. I like the whole Lorelai going off and doing wild, but not really doing wild because she's not the type of person who would ever go hiking type of situation that happened. So I thought both of those were really cute, just them being the curmudgeonly park rangers. I don't know. I just thought it was adorable. Maybe it's just because I think they're adorable, but it worked for me. Next up is Dean. Dean is going in my good category, and I feel like they've redeemed him as a character and as a person on the show, because after everything that happened in seasons 4 and 5 where Dean cheats on his wife, I feel like this was a really nice way to use Dean. It wasn't overly heavy-handed, and it was kind of nice just seeing them together and them acknowledging what they had. Even just Dean asking like what Rory would say about him in the book, acknowledge the fact that they have some like difficult issues in their past, and that I felt like that was an acknowledgement of that. But I felt like Dean has grown up to be like one of the more functional, which wasn't necessarily something I would say at the end of season 5, or yes, season 5 is the last time he shows up. Like if you had asked me before this series had happened, Dean probably would have been at the bottom of my list, but now he's towards the top, or at least higher than Logan, which we'll get to Logan in a later section. Also Jess. Jess, I was debating about whether or not to put in a good or a bad category. The bad is the fact that they didn't utilize him enough in my opinion, but he's also my favorite. It was fun because when I was having the viewing party, when Jess first showed up, everyone like screamed, and then we like actually rewound the scene at the newspaper office and watched it again. But this is the absolute best version of Jess that we could ever ask for. He's kind to Rory and gives her great advice. He once again pushes her in the direction that she needs to be going in terms of her life and her career. When he sees Luke for the first time, or we see the two of them together and he knocks the hat off his head, like that scene in and of itself, the advice and listening to Luke later on, and just even him like pulling out the router, things like that. A lot of people I've heard and seen on the internet talk about the fact that the whole Luke's Wi-Fi thing didn't make sense, because it's like, if Luke doesn't want to have Wi-Fi at his diner, why does he have this whole big shenanigan? My theory is that he uses the Wi-Fi to lure the customers in, and then once they've spent their money on coffee or whatever it is and they can't get the Wi-Fi to work, they leave. So he gets their money and he gets them in the door, and then he's able to kick them out. But that is a complete side note. And then finally, for the goods, I have the wedding. I think the wedding was perfect. It would have been nice to see the whole big shebang with like the entire town, and to see Emily there, and to see Jess wasn't even at the wedding, which I thought was a little bit disappointing, but I thought it was perfect. I thought it was shot perfect. Using reflecting light again, oh, just gave me all the feels. Yeah, I really enjoyed it so much, and I think that just like the last 10-20 minutes of Fall was just like perfect. Like, fall is so well done. It was just like the perfect cap on the series. I think that especially after watching spring and summer, I was a little bit worried, but then fall just completely made it up. If Amy Sherman Palladino could just write all of them, that'd be great. Don't let Daniel do it anymore. Just have him like give his input, or you write and he directs or something along those lines. Now for the bads. So the first one I want to mention is Michelle. Not the fact that he is gay, but the fact that they had him be gay without ever acknowledging it was a little bit weird for me, or a little bit jarring, because one, it makes you think that you've missed something in the series. Two, as someone who watched the show when it originally aired, there was always a lot of discussion about whether or not Michelle was gay, and everyone, the characters or the actor as well as the creators and writers of the show, always said that no, he's just effeminate, he's French, which is fine, and I think that's totally a fine thing to have in a character, but to have him suddenly become gay is just a very like jarring thing, I think, especially as someone who's been watching for a long time. Of course, it's possible that he's like bisexual or something like that, which again is whatever, it's fine, but I think it's just weird that they didn't acknowledge it. And along those lines, the whole Mr. Kim thing, I think I would have been fine with the Mr. Kim joke if they had said, "Hi, Mr. Kim," or "Hey, there's my dad," whatever the line is that Lane says. But the fact that they actually showed an actor was really weird to me. Like, in my headcanon of Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino, they're the type of people who don't listen to the critics, don't really care what other people say about their work and things like that. They just create the thing that they want to create, even if the things that they create is super problematic. But throughout the series, it feels like that they've heard a lot of the critiques that people have had about Gilmore Girls, and they try to fix them somehow, or comment on them, or wink at them, things like that. There's been a lot of comments about the lack of racial diversity in Gilmore Girls, which it seems like they've kind of fixed, except for the fact that all of the racial diversity either are people of color who don't have speaking lines, or they're like stereotypes like the Korean show choir, which is not great, or it's the stuff dealing with LGBTQ issues, which on one hand they make Michelle gay and they have another gay character in the show and things like that, which is great, but then they make a joke like Finn in the club where he makes the joke about the man becoming a woman next week or something along those lines. I don't even know what it is. I like blocked it out from my memory. It feels like they're still very problematic, and if you watch Gilmore Girls, you can see very problematic things, and some of it is of its time. I hate using that line, but it is true that certain things people weren't as aware of as they are now, but it makes it all the more glaring when it happens in a year in the life, and there's a bunch of it. There's like the whole commentary about the pool. I hate summer. Summer is probably like my least favorite episode for sure. Everything about the pool scenes really irritated me, besides the fact of like making fun of the fat people at the pool. In the first scene, Rory is wearing like jeans and a long sleeve shirt. Who wears that to the pool? Secondly, have they never been to a pool before? Like, what is happening? Like, the way they're talking about it in that opening scene, it's almost as if they've never been to the pool before. It's like, you are in your 30s, 40s. Why are you just having these thoughts now? And then also like having the kids who hold the umbrellas, like that's a thing that I don't find endearing about the Gilmore Girls. This also happens where Lorelai bids on the basket in spring and she like eats that girl's, like she actually wins and eats the lunch, and you can tell that the character is really irritated. That's another thing that I feel like has changed in these new episodes. You can see people actually getting irritated with Lorelai and Rory as opposed to just indulging them all the time. It feels like in the series people were a lot more enamored towards them, and in the series you start to see this more peripheral townies who are actually irritated, which made me a little bit happy. Speaking of the townies, is it just me, or was Bootsy in this series a lot? Like, it felt like he was constantly there, and didn't always have to be him that had those lines. Like, I understand there's the one scene where they're arguing about the floaty hut, and so that made sense to be Bootsy because him and Luke sort of have this weird rivalry thing, but it felt like there was a lot of Bootsy, and the fact that he doesn't have facial hair took me a second to realize it was Bootsy, but it felt like that could have been utilized to highlight some other townies, but maybe that's just me. And now for the ugly. The big, most glaring, obvious one is just Rory and Logan stuff. Oh man. Now, I will say that after rewatching Gilmore Girls for like years now, the older that you get, the more that you realize that Rory is actually the worst. So I feel like in the series they just like doubled down on that and just made her exceptionally the worst. Like, she is so privileged in every horrible way that you could think, and it's just exemplified in this series so much. And then the fact that she is willing to be the other woman again is just insane to me. My friends and I were having this discussion about Rory Logan stuff. I've actually had multiple discussions about this with multiple friends. One of my friends was wondering how this would even happen, and my theory is that, you know, when Rory's traveling around, she ends up like bumping into Logan somewhere, they end up hooking up one time, and then every time they see each other, it just becomes a thing that they just always do when they're together, to the point where even though they're in other relationships, they still keep this up, which is horrible and not a justification, but at least an explanation of how this could possibly happen. Another thing that came up with another group of friends is the fact that Rory and Logan had so much growth, and as a relationship and as a couple, and especially Logan, became like this ultimate, perfect, ideal boyfriend. But if you think about it, all the stuff that happened in terms of their character growth and relationship growth, and especially Logan's growth, happens in season 7, which makes me wonder whether or not that's a thing that Amy Sherman-Palladino would have actually wanted for that character. If you aren't aware, Amy Sherman-Palladino left the show at the end of season 6, and she has no idea what actually happened in season 7. Like, she never actually watched the episodes. What she had was she like talked to the other writers and the other people and made sure that nothing major happened in the show, or she like checked to see what the major plot points were in the show. So she knows that Lorelai and Christopher got married and then divorced before getting back together with Luke. They even reference that in the miniseries. And she probably knows that Logan proposes to Rory at the end of season 7, but she doesn't really see how Logan grows as a character in season 7. So it feels like these versions of Rory and Logan are picking up right where they left off in season 6, which I think makes the most sense. So if you think about their relationship, this is the version of them that probably would have extrapolated out of season 6 as opposed to what has happened in season 7. But honestly, they are just the worst. Like, the fact that Logan is engaged and the fact that Rory has this other boyfriend who she won't break up with for whatever reason. She keeps forgetting about him, but like literally anytime he texts you, just text him back and be like, hey, let's break up. I mean, whatever. That's not how, but you know, like literally every time you hang out with him, you could easily break up with him. So anyways, they're both the worst, and the fact that they had their relationship like that is just so messed up, and it made me so angry. Other things, the musical. The musical in and of itself, like the songs were good and entertaining and fun, but it just went on for way too long. Like, that is literally 10 minutes of the entire episode of Summer, which is way too long. They could have easily just done one of those songs, or part of one of those songs in my opinion, and like part of the Hamilton rap, and that would have been perfect. Instead they do like 3 full songs. They could have even just done like clips of the 3 songs so you can see how ridiculous it continues to get on. There was no need for that to be 10 minutes. I love Sutton Foster, but that was unnecessary. I fast forward through it every single time. When I was having my viewing party, I told my friends to go to the bathroom during that point because I knew that they were not going to miss anything. The other thing that I didn't really like is the Life and Death Brigade. Wasn't really a big fan of them in the original series, so them showing up and having this whole weird sequence, one, that felt a week too long as well, but also the fact that they are in their 30s and they still act like this is a little bit insane. Like, if I was in my 30s, well, I am in my 30s now, and my friends still acted that way and that immaturely, I would hate them so much. But I suppose Rory's the worst, so why not be endeared by people who are also the worst? Also, did anyone else think it was really weird that at the end of the Life and Death Brigade, when she's saying goodbye to all of them, it seems like they're all secretly in love with Rory? Is everyone secretly in love with Rory? I made a joke over on the Book Riot back channels. We were talking about Gilmore Girls, and I made a joke saying that if I encountered someone with Alexis Bledell's face, I would probably fall in love with them as well. So maybe that's just the explanation. But it's just really weird to me how every single person still seems to be in love with Rory. Like, even Dean and Jess, her old boyfriends, who she was horrible to, Logan, everyone. It seems like everyone's still in love with Rory. 30-something gang, which in and of itself is just kind of crazy. But the fact that they all want to be best friends with Rory, like, why does everyone love Rory so much? And then finally, the final 4 words. It felt too obvious for that to actually be the final 4 words, but it makes sense, especially if you rewatch the series. I highly recommend rewatching this because I feel like you pick up on a lot more of the themes and ideas that they are playing with once you see how it all comes. Like, the idea of life coming full circle and their story coming full circle all makes sense with this ending. Also, the scene with Christopher plays way differently once you realize that Rory's pregnant and knows that she's pregnant. The questions that she's asking feel a lot more poignant and feel more about her and the choices that she's about to make as opposed to being about the book itself. It's really fantastic. I highly recommend rewatching that scene especially. Oh, also, I wanted to say, even though Rory's the worst, I did really enjoy the Jack Bauer impersonation that she did. I don't know why, but it makes me laugh every single time. I love it so much. Anyways, final 4 words. Am I satisfied? Yes. I'm one of those people that can handle open-ended endings. My sister isn't. She came up to me as soon as it finished and was like, I'm so angry. And I have lots of friends who are like that as well. They want to know like who the father is, all this stuff. And while I have my guesses, I'm fine with not knowing. It also does set it up perfectly, so if they wanted to do more in the future, they have the layout to do so. My theory is that it's Logan's baby and that Logan is her Christopher and Jess is her Luke is the type of parallels that they're supposed to be making. But yeah, overall I was satisfied, I guess, originally, but I think that especially rewatching it over again, it feels very satisfying as a viewer, especially when you see the way they act it out and the pauses and the reactions. It's just all very, very well done, and even if they never do any more after this, I'm happy. So overall, I'm really happy with the series. I think especially knowing what the final four words are and knowing that this could have theoretically happened in season 7. I think I like it a lot better now because Rory's older. If she was 22 and finishing up college and saying that she's pregnant, I don't think I would have been as satisfied. But I really like the way it all worked out here in the end with Luke and Lorelai getting married and Rory moving on to the next stage of her life. So yeah, overall I'm satisfied. Those are my thoughts. Those aren't even my complete thoughts, but yeah, there's a lot I didn't talk about. So feel free to leave a comment. Leave all of the comments. Leave the longest comments you possibly like, because I am here for long Gilmore Girls comments. And if there's anything I left out that you want me to talk about, definitely ask it down in the comment section and I will reply with my reaction on that as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.